Hello everybody, Ryan Kurzak here of Asheville Vedic Astrology. Today we're going to review some principles dealing with the Bhava Cusps, the 10th Bhava Cusp in particular, and also reading the chart from the Ascendant itself. These principles will help us see our activity in life, our rise and fall in life. It can help us see our station in life, as well as our purpose, both our mundane purpose as well as our soul's purpose. And these are going to be things that we cover in the spring semester webinars that we'll be having beginning in March. So this is just a little snapshot glimpse of some more detailed practices that we're going to be covering during the spring online classes. And if you're interested in finding out more about those, you can go to ashevillevedicastrology.com and look at the events page. We're only allowing 24 people into the webinar. Currently, we have about 4 spaces left. We are going to be meeting twice a week for about 2 months, once on a Wednesday and once on a Sunday. A few folks who aren't able to make both online sessions, they're going to be participating through recordings. So if you can't make both sessions, it's okay. We record the session and you get it within 24 to 48 hours afterwards. So you might want to consider that, especially if you're really interested in understanding astrology in detail and really getting to the nuts and bolts of how to read a chart thoroughly. Because there's a lot more to it than simply looking at the ascendant or saying, my sun sign is this, or my ascendant lord's in the first house. And we'll see here that, for example, when you want to know about a person's activity in the world and their purpose, well, there's different levels of that purpose. There's the soul level. What is it? Why did your soul come here in the first place? What is it learning? What is it meant to express? What is it meant to evolve into? We'll be able to see that from the ascendant. The sign of the ascendant will tell us the general nature of the soul. The sign opposite the ascendant will give us an idea of what we're supposed to focus on, what we're supposed to find balance within. And I have an example here that we'll see how to do this. If we want to know about a person's activity in the world, more mundane activity within the world, we can look at the 10th Bhava Cusp, the sign that rules the 10th Bhava Cusp. And we can even read the chart from the 10th Bhava Cusp, because that's like looking at the specific chart of the career and the activity within the world. That can be very telling. And when we use that with dashas, when we use that with transits, that allows us to see these ups and downs within a person's career or activity. And again, these are going to be things that we go over very specifically within the spring semester, the 2015 spring semester classes that's coming up in March. So go check out that syllabus so you get a greater sense of just how detailed all of this can be. And it's important to realize that astrology needs to be this detailed. Because again, what are we doing? We're looking at a chart, we're looking at positions of planets to analyze and predict all of the idiosyncrasies of an individual person, human being. And that's profound. To be able to do that is mind-boggling. And to think that it would be easy is even more mind-boggling. We need to look at each aspect of the chart individually and then put it together to synthesize, who is the individual that we're looking at? Whose chart is this? And this takes time and it takes dedication. The thing is, though, is that while it's complicated, the principles are really the same across the board. Meaning, if you want to know about a person's financial situation, we can look at the 2nd Bhava Cusp and read the chart from there. Look at it from dashas, transits. You can, as I mentioned, look at the 10th Bhava Cusp about career. 5th Bhava Cusp for creativity, children, legacy. 9th Bhava Cusp for culture, guru, relationship to the upbringing of the parents. So all these things, once you have the basics down, once you know the quality of the planets, what each Bhava Cusp means, what each sign means, what each interplay between avashtas and yogas mean, you can apply them to all these different areas of life. And this is why it takes a long time to study a chart well. Because you have to look at all these different things, otherwise you'll probably get something wrong. And that's okay, we do our best. But the more thorough you are, the more accurate you can be. Personally, when I look at a chart, my process is I have my charts for the week. I print them out on Sunday evening, and on Monday morning I start studying them. And I might not have the session recording until Friday or Thursday, but I start studying all the charts at the very beginning of the week. That way I can come back to them every day and look at a little bit more, let it settle in, contemplate. And when you're able to do this, when you're able to take your time with it, you get much better information. So keep this in mind. But let's get to these specific little techniques that I want to share with you today. Okay, well, we're going to be looking at a chart of a Sagittarius ascendant, and I'll pull it up here in a minute. And ideally what we want to focus on is, what is the ascendant lord? What is the ascendant? What is the sign of the ascendant? That's going to tell us, how is this person going to be perceived? How are they going to project themselves? And that will color a lot of the person's activity within the world. We're going to take a moment to look at the 10th Bhava Cusp. And that's not the 10th house. It can be the 10th house. Again, cusps are difficult because the further north you go on the planet and the further south you go on the planet, the cusps actually can go into the same signs, as you'll see. And the 10th cusp can give us an idea of, all right, what is this person's career and activity going to be, both by looking at the sign itself as well as the planets from that sign. And we can overlap that with transits to give us a better sense of when will there be rises and falls within the person's activity or career. And on top of that, we'll just chat briefly about this. One thing that we can see from the chart, particularly the ascendant, is a person's station in life. Meaning that if someone has their ascendant lord in the 10th house or the 1st house or the 7th, they may be more social. They may be more politically minded. They may be more in leadership roles, more visible. If someone has their ascendant lord in the 12th house, the 6th house, the 8th house, or the 4th house, they might work at home. They might work behind the scenes. They might not be as well known or as visible within their career. And these are generalities, so you don't want to latch too much onto these. Remember, you have to read the whole chart to get a sense of who is this person. Because there are plenty of people with their 1st house lord in the 12th that are leaders in their own way. There are plenty of people that have strong angular houses that sometimes don't amount to what we might consider to be very much. But again, it doesn't matter. The point is that we start to get these principles down, the easier it will be to read the chart, and the more areas of the chart we can apply them to, the greater picture we can paint about a person's life and situation and possibilities. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull up this chart. And what can we see from this chart in the very beginning? Well, we want to start and see where the cusps lie. And again, as we see in this chart, the cusps are not evenly spaced. For example, we have the 1st cusp here in the ascendant, which makes sense. That will always be true. But we see the 2nd cusp goes into Aquarius. The 3rd and 4th cusp are together in Aries. 5th and 6th in Taurus, and you can figure out the rest all the way around. But what is this? Why is this the case? Well, I would advise you to go back through this channel, the Asheville Vedic Astrology YouTube channel, and review the video on cusps, because it takes a long time to describe this. But the point is that these are degrees. Let's see if we can give you an example here. So using Kala, I don't believe it's that one, no. Use the Bhava Chalita, and I use the Campanus system. And this brings up the specific degrees of each cusp. And so the 1st cusp is 2429 Sagittarius, which we see here. 2nd cusp is 17 degrees Aquarius, which we see here. Now, if this person would have been born closer to the equator, then these cusps would have been more evenly spaced, and they would have aligned how you think they should. Second cusp in the second house, fourth cusp in the fourth house, and so on. But this is the beauty of astrology, especially using the Campanist system. Because, whereas before, you might have read the career specifically from Virgo, well, now we know that we need to read the career from Libra. So we're actually going to have a more accurate perception of this person's activity within the world by reading it from this point. So keep this in mind. But before we get there, let's go back to the Ascendant. So with the Ascendant, we see that this is a Sagittarius individual, ruled by Jupiter. So what does that usually tell us? Well, Sagittarius has high ideals. Sagittarius is represented by the bowman. Sagittarius is always shooting for the future. Sagittarius is also an extremely philosophical sign. People who have Sagittarius as an ascendant can often get involved in politics or cultural things, law, religion, philosophy. So we know that there's going to be an aspect of this to the person. They're going to be interested in philosophy. They're going to be interested in culture. Now, we can look to the opposing sign of Sagittarius to get a sense of where is this person going to need to find balance. Well, what we see is, since Sagittarius is often a sign that deals with high ideals, we need to look to opposite Sagittarius, which is Gemini. And Gemini is usually a little more thought-oriented, a little more trial and error, figure things out, not so faith-based, not so philosophical, oftentimes more pragmatic. Why? Because just like Virgo, Gemini is ruled by Mercury. And we can get a sense that this person is going to have a bit of this within them anyway, so they're going to be able to more easily work towards this because they have Mercury in the Ascendant. So anytime you have an Ascendant and you have the seventh Lord in the Ascendant, usually that helps the individual to engage their evolutionary process a little more easily. Now, of course, we need to check other things, like avashtas to that Mercury. We do know Venus is delighting Mercury, because Venus is a friend. We know the Sun is agitating Mercury, because that is the lagitati avashta that always happens when the Sun is with a planet. We know that it's got the impact of a exalted Jupiter supporting this ascendant, because we see Jupiter goes into Cancer here where it's exalted. So while we do have agitation to Mercury, agitation to Venus, we do have delight to Mercury, we know that this ascendant in general is probably going to flow very easily and very well towards its goal, its life path, because its ascendant Lord is also exalted. Now it's going to be rocky, and there's going to be crisis and significant change. Why? Because we have the ascendant Lord exalted in the 8th house. And even though it's exalted, this can put stress on one's life path, because the 8th house is considered to be the flaw, the bhava of the flaw, where things can occur out of nowhere. Sudden breaks, sudden changes occur out of nowhere. For good or for bad, depends on the dignity of these planets. We see that the moon is in good dignity, it's in its own home. Jupiter is exalted, and these two, Jupiter and moon together, that's an excellent combination. It really helps to, delight each other, because it is an avashta for delight. So any significant changes that occur, major breaks or changes that occur, while yes, they're still going to be painful, often they will lead to greater success. Now, that's one way we start to look at the chart. The next, when we're considering a person's career or activity within the world, we want to look at their 10th Bhava Cusp. And one thing I do want to say is that let's back up just a bit here. There's a few things to consider. Number one, this person was considered to be an extremely shy individual. So we need to remember that. And why? Because we have the first Lord in the 8th house. And when the first lord is in the 8th, oftentimes a person, just like being a Scorpio ascendant, would retreat more into themselves. So it can make them shy. Scorpio, 8th house energies are oftentimes very similar. However, this was a very popular individual, very popular. The moon is a planet that deals with popularity. And we can see from this chart the moon is just past full. So if the moon would have been in Capricorn, Aquarius, and so on around, that means it's moving towards full. Once it gets to Gemini and starts coming back towards the sun, it's moving towards a new moon. So it's always from the sun that we assess this. But having a moon this bright, that usually makes a person extremely popular. We see that it's impacting the Ascendant Lord, which adds to its popularity. And we see that the moon is getting delighted by Jupiter. So this is an extremely popular, yet shy individual. So keep this in mind. It's important for later. Now we look at the 10th Bhava Cusp, and we see that it is ruled by Libra, the sign of Venus, the sign that can deal with art. A lot of artists have Venus-ruled signs as their ascendants, but also people who are involved in communicating with others or artistic endeavors, cultural endeavors, will have a Libra as their 10th cusp or 10th house. And so now we want to read the chart from this 10th cusp, meaning if we took this little line here, which makes this indicate the ascendant, let's imagine we move it over here. So now we have Libra as the ascendant. We're going to read this chart as though Libra is the ascendant. So now the career chart is up. We're looking at the career chart. And what do we see? We see that the ruler of the 10th Bhava Cusp goes into the 3rd house from the 10th Bhava Cusp. It's Venus. What's the 3rd house represent? It deals with using one's hands, one's arms. A lot of creative individuals work in this way. We see that in the 10th, from the 10th cusp, so here's the 10th cusp, we count around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Who do we have in the 10th house but Jupiter, the ruler of the 3rd, which again shows more of using one's arms, using one's hands. And Jupiter is also a very creative planet. So we have creativity getting involved. And anytime we get Moon and Jupiter together, according to Gemini, this is an excellent combination for writing, for composition. The Moon itself, from a Gemini perspective, is considered to be a planet of rhythm and music. And so we have here this combination from the 10th cusp here, to the 10th house from the 10th cusp. We see that the work itself is going to be very creative. It's going to be compositional. It's going to use a person's hands, their skills, their talents, their hobbies. And this person was extremely passionate about the work they did. They were very interested in breaking new ground. And anytime we get Mercury and Venus together, whatever house that happens to be in, that makes that house extremely interesting, meaning that the person gets very interested in that. So from the career, we see the interest comes in regards to in improving one's skills and talents and hobbies, all 3rd house things. And this person was incessantly pursuing their hobbies and their talents and their skills and made it into their career. Why? Because the 3rd house from the 10th cusp goes into the 10th house from the 10th cusp. Take some time to consider all this. It can be a little bit overwhelming at first, but the more you think it through, you understand what I'm getting at here. Now, what's also kind of fascinating is that this person didn't get well recognized until they went to another country. So their own culture didn't really embrace them immediately. Their success came from going to another country. And according to Gemini, believe it or not, Cancer is said to represent foreign lands and foreign countries. And here, where do we have the strength? But with Jupiter and Moon in Cancer here. Now, Of course, once this person became famous, they became famous all around the world. This is the birth chart of a famous guitar player who had a fairly, what I consider to be a short career, but one that impacted his culture many times over. So this is one way that we can start to look at, and we've only briefly touched the surface here because there's other things we can consider with Rashi aspects in particular. We can look at the positions of the nodes of the moon. We can go really in depth with this chart, and I might actually continue with this chart because I really find it fascinating. But with these little techniques, knowing this, knowing what signs mean, knowing the natures and qualities of the planets, knowing how to use Bhava Cusps, they really allow you to go in detail with your analysis of a chart and how a person might express within the world. So whenever you are looking at a chart, if you ever get stumped, if it's not working out as easy as you might think, try using the Campanus House Cusp system. And this is Kala software. When Kala is able to put these cusps in here. And use those. For example, if we want to know about this person's children, we would look at the 5th Bhava Cusp. If we want to know about this person's spouse, we look at the 7th Bhava Cusp. And so on all the way around. If we want to know about their health, we could look at the 6th or the 8th Bhava Cusp, and we could read the chart from there. If we wanted to know about how is there going to be a rise and fall within their career, their health, or with their children, we could then look to see when are certain planets going to transit over these particular cusps. And they'll give you really precise, detailed information about timing. Of course, we can include the Karakas too, Gemini Karakas, the Chara Karakas, and that gives us even more detailed approach. But right now, just use these basic principles. Okay. Okay, now you've got a decent handle on how to look at the Ascendant and how to look at the 10th Bhava Cusp. We juggled a lot of terms and numbers, which when you first start doing that, it's confusing and frustrating. I know because it drove me nuts when I first started considering cusps and the 10th from the 10th cusp and the 3rd from the 10th cusp and so on. But in time, you get used to thinking about a chart in that way and it becomes easier. So if you've had some difficulty following along, don't worry about it. That's normal. Just rewind and watch the video a few times over and over again, stopping it, pausing it, thinking about what I'm saying until you get a handle on it. I really encourage you to learn more about the signs themselves, the qualities of the signs, Libra, Virgo, just the signs. But learn more about them because they can help you understand and get more of a sense of what is the direction of the energies of the Ascendant, of the particular cusps in question. And as I mentioned in the course that we're going to be doing in March, we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on the qualities and energies of the planets, of the signs, how each planet represents an aspect of your consciousness, how you can gain insight into the strengths and weaknesses of each planet. And we are going to be spending time looking at the cusps in detail, because I found that without the cusps, we miss an awful lot. So if you have questions about how to read a chart using cusps, don't hesitate to sign up for the class. And whether you do that, participate in the live webinar, which will be using WebEx, I believe, it's fantastic, or if you participate through the recordings, you'll still be able to ask questions through the recordings. But either way, this is going to be a good one, and I'm looking forward to it quite a bit. So we'll be in touch, and I'll be in and out these next few weeks, so I don't know if I'll have time to do another video before classes start in March, but I'm going to try, and I might actually keep using this chart that we're looking at here because there's so much to explore and such great information. It's a really good teaching chart. So until that time, be well and keep studying, be patient, practice meditation, allow the information to be revealed to you as clearly as it can be. And then practice. Look at charts and practice. Okay. Peace.